general rule, the original is almost always better than the remake, and in this case, it is no different. Although people label the new remake of Shogun as a masterclass, as the new Game of Thrones, and everything, it is a show that is sincerely overhyped and does not deserve as much credit as it has received. The only two reasons may be that they have never heard about the 1980 version, or they feel it is visually fantastic, much like the case with Society of the Snow, which for some reason has a much better rating than the original Alive from 1993, but yet so many more people have heard about this new version, which is still the exact same story. Today, however, we will talk about a few reasons why Shogun from 1980 is much better than this new remake. First reason we will talk about is the cast. And while you in the 24 version really only see 3 good characters the way they are written, in this case Toranaga, Anshin and Mariko, the 1980 version features a much more believable and bulletproof cast where even those 3 actors playing these characters conducts a much better act. Even that guy Anshin meets in the prison, Captain Ferreira, played by Vladek Shebal, are much better portrayed in this version, as well as Rodriguez, who becomes captain right by the end in the 1980 version. But all these actors really give their heart and soul in the act. Ferreira, when he tries to show his power, Rodriguez really lives himself into the act, and the guy in the jail telling Anshin about polite society customs in Japan are just so much better written. The only character that may be better in the 24 version may just be Ishido, but that is the only one and shows the weakness of the cast in the 24 version. If we first talk about the important character Anshin, you do feel he is more gentleman-like in this version and less like a drunken sailor all the time, and also that he really tries to understand Japanese customs, a lot more wholehearted, where he in the 24 version constantly asks about his crew and his ships, which at times can become tiresome. It is also a much deeper focus on Anshin learning the language rather than all the alliance talk of the newest version. On the emotion and search and his connection to the other characters, you see a much stronger act from Richard Chamberlain here that can act on all emotions, whether he is meant to be sad, angry, and confused. Where he in the newest version, mostly throughout the show, just seems like a drunken, angry, stereotype sailor that just wants his ship and his crew. Of course, that's also on his mind in this version, but not as much. If we then go on to the Toda Mariko character, which is a completely different act than the one done by Anna Savai, yet nobody talks about the performance done by Yuko Shimada in the 1980 version, in which he won a Golden Globe for, but the act is a much more sincere and a realistic one. In the 24 version, Mariko is a lot darker as a character that just only talks about her death wish and seems ice cold and distant all the time. She seems a lot more kind and caring and not so ice cold towards Anshin in the older version. In this version, they seem to have a connection and a deeper understanding right from the very start. The actor here, Joko, channels real emotion and does not need to only play the dark side of the character that Anna Savai does all the time. She's more happy and cheerful, and of course it may not be as dramatic with the flashbacks not being present, but I like this version of Mariko much better. If we talk about the Toranaga character, there's really not too much of a change there, but I still feel the actor that portrays him in this version seems better because he manages to portray that angry, proud emotion where he makes it all about honor in the right way. If you see the relation between him and Yabu, for example, in this one, he talks to him in a lot harsher tone, and generally, the Toranaga character in this version seems a bit like Ishido in the other version, also mainly because he also has more screen time. The second reason why the 1980 version is better is because the right characters are given the screen time. In the newest version, you feel you don't see enough of Anshin. You don't see enough of Toranaga, but you see a lot more of Mariko, Ishido, and Lady Ochiba. Those two latest mentioned characters, there are also someone that makes the newest version very boring, because you take time to craft the Mariko character very deep from flashbacks and everything, and how she and Ochiba were like sisters. There's also this kind of forced way now, these days, that the female characters need to be carved more place, when they really only manage to bake a cake with too much chocolate in it. What I mean by that is that a show is much better like this version when the focus is more on fewer characters, because here you see the focus for the most part being on Toranaga, Anshin and Mariko the way it should be, because they are actually the three best characters in the show. Perhaps you will miss character building in the 1980 version, but it is a show that progresses more naturally and do not draw itself into long alliance talk when instead Toranaga is given information by letter rather than we need to be shown how Ishido makes the decisions in the council. There are also some flashbacks with Toranaga on how he won a battle as a little kid, but that's something that again drags the story too much in the wrong direction. Reason number 4 is the tension. You may have the score and you may try to create some tension in the newest version, but in the 1980 version, it floats much more naturally. The tension music here is much more accelerated, for instance when the pilot ship crashes, in the beginning when Mariko tries to commit suicide, or during the attack on the castle. A further reason is because of the more authentic way it is done. This version is all about honor, Japanese society and their customs. The way the mood is set during the visuals and the scenes, it is just a creation of a mood that makes this show feel way more authentically Japanese than the 24 version. It is way more respect between the characters despite much of the same story. Therefore, I would say, while in the newest version where it seems like everybody hates each other and Anshin and Mariko has a death stare at each other, this one feels more authentic in a way that a Japanese village would have a ton of respect for a foreigner that comes into their lands trying to get integrated and learn their culture. Because that's really what this version is more about. It is actually about the Anshin trying to learn Japanese and not the drenched alliance talk of the newest version, where you are never truly in a world where it does really try to learn the language. For instance, in the 1981, Mariko learns him the difference between the form masu and masen, where one resembles, for example, that you do understand wakarimasu, and one resembles the negative form wakarimasen, I don't understand. In that way, you sense a more respect and a more gentle Japanese way of displaying this show. The battles and events are also done much more dramatically, like I talked about with the Crimson Sky attack and Mariko's attempt to commit suicide. You just build up the tension, music much more, and even the scenes in the jail and Toranaga's lashing out at other characters are done in a very entertaining way. The same can be said about the quarrel between Anshin and Buntaro, which is also a scene that is done in a much more tension-filled way. If we talk about some events being different that actually makes this version better, we got Anshin learning Toranaga's sailor dance instead of learning how to swim, which seems more realistic, that he walks in on him drinking sake and dancing. The way Mariko dealt with not being able to escort two ladies out of the castle, which she in the news version tries to force herself out of the castle by having a couple of men behind her going into battle, where in this version that seems way more realistic, she asks to leave, but is refused, and then instead goes straight on to threaten to commit suicide. Because while her actions in the newest version seems more exaggerated, and I think it is done just to make Mariko feel more powerful, I think her act in the older version is the most realistic play. You have got the events when Black Throne does become samurai and gets his own defense force in Jedo, and you see the ritual where all those men plead allegiance to him, which are some interesting events not done in the new version. In this version, he also sails at first with his men and seems to get back his ship, instead of the version where he joins forces with Yabashigi to sail without his men none of the times in the new version. Unfortunately for him, however, it is all burnt down, and he seems forced to be in Japan. He also asked for Mariko's hand in marriage right before she dies, but is refused by Toranaga, despite that there seems to be a stronger bond between them. And just like in Dune Part 2 with the character played by Zendaya, I feel his character is changed for Anna Savai in the 24 version to be a bit darker, perhaps more ice cold, just so she could play the character, which is done so many times in new movies or shows these days. So now I have given you a couple of reasons why the 1980 version is better than the 2024, but like many new shows today, it will continue to be overhyped, even though it might not actually even get a new season. If we talk about rating, by the way, I will give the new one a 6 out of 10 and the old one an 8 out of 10.